Welcome to the StockMiner.com studios. I'm your StockMiner Brian Johnson, and we close the week today. What? I know, down. I can't believe it myself. Actually, I'm still trying to, gather it all in and actually take it in that the markets closed down for the week, not just for a day this time, for the week. And actually, let's give the Bears their props. They did drag it down all week long. Actually, 30 points in the S&P for the entire week is certainly not a huge amount. It's not as though the Bears really tore into the markets or anything, but it was a decline. It was a drop. So it's still a steady drop, but it is a drop. So at the end of the week, we ended up down for the week. Today we were down, 14 points in the S&P. Dow, of course, hanging a little bit tougher than the rest of the markets. Nasdaq down about 1.5. So it was leading the way, which is typically the case. The Dow takes a while to turn that beast around. We've talked about that 100,000 times. I understand where I'm at on that. But for the week, not a bad move by the Bears. Nothing that makes me go, oh boy, here we go. This is going to be a big pullback or anything like that. But until things turn around, guys, don't change your bias from what it is. And for the time being, you know what? Coming into next week, I'm going to be a little bit more neutral to probably even a little bit bearish now, just in the short term, because that's what the charts tell me to do now. We did have, like I said, this move down. Look where we broke that blue line. Here on the Dow is a really good illustration. We broke this blue line, and I said, I think it's going to be short-lived. On the Dow, it certainly was. It did not reach to the heights that the Nasdaq and the S&P did during the week. So it dropped down, a hold of this line here, test, and drop. Now we've had drops the entire week. Resting where at the 200 period moving average here, and ultimately where at the 200-day moving average. Very close though. Notice how we actually closed below the 20-day moving average. So we'll give the bulls a chance to get back above that coming into early next week. It did close below. It is what it is. It's not by that much, maybe 10, 15, let's call it 20 points below on the Dow. And it is what it is. But here was the drag all week long. Every time the bulls kept buying it up and buying it up and buying it up. And I did make mention that it just didn't feel as strong this time. When the bulls would come in, they were buying it up, taking it in at a better level just about every single day. Even today, for the most part, it got down here, and you still see a lower wick on this, where the bulls just keep trying to pull it up, pull it up. But their strength wasn't quite as great as it had been back in these days here, and there was no follow-through day after day after day. So here we are back below the 20-day moving average, back below 11,200. That was the mark to start looking for a short. Opportunities today of maybe 50 points before it bounced back up again. However, nothing that we can't continue to look at coming into next week. The Nasdaq on a 60 also broke this blue line and just continued down from there. Notice how it retested these moving average, but eventually ended up down below what was, 2140. Remember I talked about 2140, 2160 area. Talked about that for the longest time. We kind of fooled around in that area again, but this time we closed below the 2140 area, not quite into the 200, close enough here on the Nasdaq. The Dow did hit that 200, but notice that everything's back to the 20. Remember, that was my mantra, the 20-day moving averages, and here we are again, right at the 20-day on the Nasdaq, 2137.21 for the 20. We finished just a hair above that. So closing at just above the 20-day moving average and still continuing to hold itself in place. Notice here also the heavy volume that had come in on the previous day. It'll be interesting where we see things stay. Internals all confirmed what we were seeing today in the market with this drop. Now for the week, there it is. I know. Take a good look at it because it's been 5 weeks since we've seen a red candle on the weekly. So let's just gaze upon that for a second and reflect. So here we have 1 week down in the markets. We saw that here, 4 weeks up, a week sideways, 5 weeks up, A week sideways? 2 weeks sideways? We don't know. We don't know where this is going to go. But for the week, did finish down from where we were. Nothing major here, though. Like I said, no heavy selling. Nothing busted, no major trend lines, no major panic. We'll see that in the VIX. So a very, once again, use that word, uniform pullback in the markets up to this point. We'll see where we end up next week. But a couple week pullback is certainly not out of the question. Maybe bring us back into this area here. You bet. You betcha. And then that would prepare us for the holiday season with maybe a move up then into the markets into the end of the year. And how pretty would that be? Love to see this thing come right back into this area and give me an opportunity to buy back into Apple and some of these other NASDAQ stocks that tend to move very well into the holiday season. You betcha. You betcha dare I'll be watching that. SPX on a 60-minute here, dropping below the blue line, holding below the blue line, and ultimately getting below the 1200 area we were talking about, but closing for the day right at it. So I was looking at the 1200 area. We never broke the 1190. So kind of still stuck in limbo here. As you can see, we never reached the 200, but I'll tell you what we did reach, and that was that's right, the 20-day. We had not actually hit it on these kind of retraces here, but we did today. 1195.19, hitting a low of 1194. So at least we actually did touch it. Let's see if that continues into next week. Could act as support. Maybe we start the week up a little bit. Really not going to worry about it. Going to talk more about that on Sunday. Let's just look at what it was. It was a down week, and it was an everyday down week for the markets. The bears did a good job every day of slowly bleeding out the markets. From a weekly to back into, I said I'll give the bears a week to pull it back. They did it. They got back below that 1220 area. They did close below the 1220 area. However, we're just retesting the 200. And so far it's holding real well. So, nothing to be too panicked about yet if you're bullish on the markets. This is nothing but a very structured pullback. Here we are on the VIX. We broke the blue line. We closed above the blue line. Guys, I'm really looking at this area here. I want to see closes on the VIX above 22 and ultimately above 2350 before I really start going out on okay, maybe this is a little larger pullback than we talked about. But for the time being, I'm really not shaking at all. It is... Okay, the VIX closed above the blue line. That's what we were looking for. We saw that over here. I'll probably add another line. I think I can get another line to work here and give us one of those last line in the sand type lines I like to draw in my charts every now and then. There's definitely one forming right here in the VIX. I'm just telling you, 22 to really above 2350 will really start to get me a little bit more on the markets themselves when it comes from a VIX standpoint. On the weekly, right back to the top of that blue line, just as we see on the daily. Apple on a 60 was down today, then it was up, it was down, it was up. All the way down to 303 today, guys. With a big bounce back to 310, finishing at 308. This thing moves a lot. It's made for some very nice intraday trading. This could be any one of a million different formations. I won't even get into it. Point being, we broke 315. That was my entry to the short side up here. We got the break below 310. We got the break below 305, offering opportunities to short this on the way back down. I always want you to be cautious with Apple to the short side. I think I'm just going to wait for another entry on this one and try to catch this as maybe it bounces into the Christmas season. Not guaranteeing you it will bounce at this moment, but that is very, very common for Apple to do that, and most of the stocks. Everybody gets into the Yuletide cheer, and they want to run the market up into and through Christmas, and then January hits, and that's usually when things fall apart. But we'll worry about that later. From a daily perspective here, Apple did broke this blue line, held this blue line, and then we finally got the rollover. This was the break below this 20-day. That was my opportunity for a lot of you to say, okay, more conservative entries would be right here. Below the 20, if you took that, made some money today. There's great money to be made in Apple from an intraday standpoint. Just high basing. A little bit of pullback, a little left, a little right. But right now, no real panic. Let's see if we get back below that 300 mark, then the 295. Now we're talking about something maybe a little bit more major. To come back and retest these areas here right around 275. That would coincide very well with what we're seeing in the NASDAQ itself. The NDX 100 that we looked at, break back into here would hold very well. That would be a beautiful place to look for maybe some long entries back into Apple coming into the holiday season. I don't know if it'll get that low, but we'll wait and see. FAS on a 60-minute saw the drop too, but this is once again, I know it's been down quite a ways, but it's a pretty structured drop at this point, finding some support down here. Maybe we test this area before any kind of a bounce happens here. We'll have to wait and see, because we've run into a ton of support down here. Good opportunities to trade this short today if you're an intraday trader. Don't know if I'd be holding this over the weekend. Same thing with FAZ. Saw a move up, got above these areas, gave you your entries to the upside, told you to watch some of these overhead areas. We didn't quite reach this blue line I was looking for, but you know what? Pretty darn close. Yeah, baby. Gotta love it when these lines work. And this one worked pretty well. Got almost up there. So I told you, I don't know, what was it, above 1160 or something, and then watch the 1180-ish area. Well, that worked out perfectly. I think today the high was 1170, so not quite to the 1180 mark. But pretty good trading to the upside if you took those breaks on upward. So good intraday trading today. I hope you guys were able to pull a couple pennies out of the market. If you were watching the videos, you had your entries. You were able to get in on some pretty good opportunities and make money. I'll be back with you again this weekend. Enjoy your 2 days off from the trading. And let's hit this thing again over the weekend. Talk to you again on Sunday and set you up for next week's levels. When they break, take your entries. Make some money. Let's do it again next week. Might be something major coming into options expiration. You know I love watching those weeks. Lots of volatility in most cases. And I'll talk to you again on Sunday. Bye.